Okay, we'll go ahead and get started because it is just right at 2:50, and I want to move forward with you. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker today, uh, Dave Thomas. Dave is a retired CW05 Marine. He has spent much of his career in the artillery business, and he's also spent much of his career at Fires and Integration Division, where he wrapped up his final tour. He is going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to many people here at this conference this week, to include the panel that's behind me right now. He's going to talk about the Marine Littoral Regiment, what that is, what that needs for support, and he's also going to talk about Joint All-Domain Command and Control, or JAC2, which is a hot button item within the joint services right now. So without further ado, let me introduce Dave, and he'll go run through this with you, and if you have questions, feel free to follow up.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So they're setting up the bar. That's going to be a distraction, but we'll move through these charts. I think I'm your last presentation today, so I'll move through so we can all use our drink passes that we got at the door today. So thank you for having me here today. Talk a few minutes about a concept that our Commandant has talked about in his planning guidance. You've probably heard about in various media outlets called the Marine Littoral Regiment. So before I go into it, I don't know if our previous MCTISA speaker talked about MCTISA at all. So we're a little outfit aboard Camp Pendleton. If you're driving up the 5 on north on the 5, and you look over and you see the golf balls sort of over by the ocean there, that's MCTISA. Sort of about somewhere between 70, 80 acres, workforce of about 300, split between civil servants, contractors, and Marines. So we do program, we support the programs from Marine Corps Systems Command in development, testing, and fielding with contract support, also supporting the help desk, our warfighter support division. So there's some MCTISA folks in the audience. Ms. Forsyth is back there, so if you have some general MCTISA questions, please feel free to grab one of us. Okay, so we've heard a lot about the Commandant's planning guidance, so I of course had to include that as well, because that was really the forcing function, the trigger that led myself and my team to start looking at ways on how we're going to crack the operations in the littorals. The Marine Littoral Regiment, still conceptual. It's coming online now in the next year or so. But how are we going to operate? How is our IC4 functions going to be implemented within that construct across the distributed island chains, the first and second island chains in Indo-PACOM? So a challenge in both systems integration, it's a challenge in transmission pathways, and that's really what we're trying to get after. So we're inside our adversaries' range rings. We still need to sense, shoot, sustain ourselves, shoot, move, and communicate for you old timers, remember that term. And also, fundamentally, we're getting back to naval integration. So we've been doing, I'll say, for the last several years in deployments, multiple deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, we've sort of been deploying individual units, but now it's time to get back to our naval roots, back to naval integration, and that means how we're going to talk, how we're going to send data, how we're going to interoperate, and how we're going to get after the mission sets that we are assigned in the littorals. So what we've created at MCTISA is an environment we're calling the Marine Littoral Regiment Battle Lab, the MLR Battle Lab. By no means are we creating an MLR. MLR means Marines, it means stuff, it means vehicles, it means weapon systems. What we're really focused on in the Battle Lab is the C4I perspective, the systems that we need to integrate, the transmission pathways that we need to use in order to pass data, kill chains, kill webs, implement those types of data services within that unit. So really what we're talking about is we're talking about specific transmission pathways, expeditionary operating within those littorals. We're talking about weapon systems that need to be commanded, controlled, multiple pathways to receive targets to our weapons, multiple pathways to receive sensor data, and multiple ways that we can use to transmit our sensor data to the naval force in an environment that's completely connected. You've heard time and time again at multiple booths here, I'm sure at multiple venues, you've heard about kill webs, you've heard about the distribution of data across wide networks, and that's what we're trying to get after at a level of a Marine regiment, okay, and the systems and equipment that they need. So really, what is a Marine, the MLR, going to have? So again, it's still somewhat conceptual, but there is a table of organization and equipment that supports what the MLR is going to be comprised of. But really, what we're looking at MCTISA and our Battle Lab and how we connect our things and our systems and talk to other units and organizations, we're really looking at the headquarters element, where we're going to do the principal functions of command and control, long-range surveillance, fires integration, information and cyber operations. We're going to look at the C4I construct within the Littoral Combat Team. Littoral Combat Team is where systems like our anti-ship capability will be located, and also other capabilities for the sea denial missions that we believe the MLR is going to be assigned. Another subordinate element within the MLR that we're building out within our labs is the Littoral Anti-Air Battalion. And this is what's going to do all of those functions of air command and control, air defense, forward air rearming, refueling, all of those functions from a C4I perspective. Again, how do we integrate that all within the great distances and within the island chains within Indo-PACOM? So we've taken all of that, and within our labs, we've created an environment. And this is a general architecture, so you can see the functions that are there that are typical of an organization, an organization that's executing operations ashore. So you'll see, C2 command and control, common operational picture services. You'll see fires clients. You'll see joint fires clients, the things that you would normally see to operate within there. The exception is now we're meshing in more of the aviation command and control capabilities, so it's one organization. Typically in the MAGTAF at the size of the regiment and above, not completely stovepiped, but we're talking about aviation command and control and ground combat elements. Normally they do integrate, but not very well in terms of a systems integration. So we're trying to break that wall down and integrate those systems in order to be more effective in the littoral operations. So again, what we talked about, the headquarters or the command element, that's sort of how we depict, that's how we've depicted that in the architecture. And the Littoral Combat Team, where our fires capabilities or our anti-ship sea denial capabilities will reside. And then of course our Littoral Anti-Aviation or Anti-Air Battalion, Aviation C2, our sensors. You heard the folks talk about Gator at the last presentation. So all of those systems that enable us to perform combat operations, sea denial operations in the littorals. So we have the lab constructed and we're conducting, we're integrated, the systems integration, the venues that we connect this laboratory to. We talked a little bit about during the introduction, JAC2. I think they're talking about it here behind us. So really what we're focused on is getting the MLR architecture right. So whether it's JAC2 or any of the other venues that you see here in a few minutes that I'm going to talk about, really what we're trying to get after is we're projecting the Marine Littoral Regiment, its C4I capability in all of these things. So talking about briefly on JAC2, the last few events, we started this back in 2019, pre-COVID. If that's how you think of things, that's how I think of it. So pre-COVID, we started JAC2, and it started out really as events, just a few systems on SIPRNet or some other network that were connected to distant labs, Army, Air Force, and Naval labs to run basic mission threads. So at this point, we're just really learning about each other's systems, how they are or are not interoperable, and how we can pass data back and forth. one of the things that our technical director at MCTISA, Ms. Susie Alderson, always says is the Marines are in the middle. And for JAC2, everything we're doing with the Joint Force, that's completely true. So I have to, in this JAC2 construct, especially within Indo-PACOM, I need to talk to the Army, I need to talk to the Air Force, I need to talk to the Navy. I'm integrated with a naval team. So for those types of events, I want to use those services JAC2 capabilities, so it's more about interoperability for the Marine Corps. So joint command and control, kill chains, and their capability integration, making sure that we can touch those developing capabilities for JAC2 and the other services. So another event that we project our MLR capability to is called NILEX. NILEX is, of course, an acronym within an acronym. If you're familiar with Live Virtual Constructive, it's the Naval Integrated Live Virtual Constructive, can't remember the E, exercise, I think. So this event it really pays dividends for our architecture because it gives us sets and reps within a naval construct. So we're running a scenario-based mission thread. The Navy, it's all naval, so I'm connected to multiple labs across the country and OCONUS sometimes that we're each one of those labs providing a capability, and we're running a very pretty high fidelity scenario, Indo-PACOM based. So in this case, we're looking at those conceptual employments of the MLR, as we saw in the Commandant's Planning Guidance, like EABO, the Expeditionary Advanced Basing Operations, DMO, Distributed Maritime Operations. So that's how we employ the MLR in these high fidelity scenarios during NILEX. It's all about naval command and control, how we integrate our systems, how we implement and execute kill chains, and again, all of those advanced naval capabilities that are being offered, the Marine Corps needs to tie into. This is where we're trying that out in these events. Project Convergence. Project Convergence is an Army event that we participate in. It's the Army's, I'll say, bid towards a JAC2 type capability. So far, we've participated in Project Convergence 20, 21, and now we're ramping up to PC 22. Same, Indo-PACOM focused. We're projecting the Marine Littoral Regiment. It's all about integration. Again, Marines in the middle, so I'm talking to the Army, I'm talking to the Navy, and we're executing that Indo-PACOM scenario. Also, EABO focus, so we're distributed across the littorals, various island chains. We're connecting to some of the Army's conceptual forces like the Multi-Domain Task Force, so we're connecting to them, understanding what their capabilities are and how we can leverage those, and the same with us. And it's a joint force construct. So how these O-plans will develop for Indo-PACOM is irregardless because we're working on those connections now to those joint force commanders, subordinate elements in the Army and in the Navy, and of course, and JAD-C2 and others with the Air Force. So multi-service C2, it sounds easy, it's not. So we've learned a lot of lessons on simple things like firewalls and policies. So we still have to deal with that and break down barriers in order to get the data across who we need to. Multi-service, again, kill chains, capability integration, we're trying to leverage and make sure that the MLR is interoperable with any of the advanced systems that the other services provide. Project Overmatch, I think Admiral Small's talking time now or just wrapping up. So we are participating with NAVWAR in, I'll say, capability development for Project Overmatch, and that's really the Navy's bid for a JAD-C2 type capability. So we're working very closely with NAVWAR. Our MLR Battle Lab is a persistent capability on the network tied in with NAVWAR, and we're exercising some of those capabilities now rapidly so we can provide capability to the Marines and the sailors in the future. And at the end, so this is a little bit of an agenda. At the end, I'll talk a little bit about how we're operationalizing these things and conducting knowledge transfer. So one of the nice things about MCTISA is we're pretty agile. We're a small force. We can move pretty quickly on things. So it's not unusual for Headquarters Marine Corps, IC4, CD&I to give us a call and say, hey, I need you to come up with this configuration in support of a real world operation. We put it together. We run it through fairly significant operational vignettes in our environment, and we can provide that feedback and then transfer that knowledge, that architecture, the capabilities very quickly to the Fleet Marine Force to implement in actual operations. So on to JAC2 very quickly. So some of the things that we've done, again, I think primarily what these events, whether it's JAC2, Overmatch, Project Convergence, Nile, is really had us tighten our shot group in on the MLR Battle Lab, the configuration, the architecture, how we're integrating systems, and how that kill web and those mission threads would get passed through from a C4I perspective. So we have probably the smartest engineers that I know at MCTISA available at all time, IT folks that know how to tie all that stuff together. But really what our secret sauce is we have that, and we have retired guys that have operational experience, both on the contracting side, government, and hired engineers that understand how that mission flow should work. So it's not only making things tie together and work, it's making things tie together, make sense, and operationalize that capability out to the fleet. We try to bring in the FMF units in anything we do into our environment. We've had VMX units, we've had 1MEF, we've had subordinate units in the division, 11th Marines, 1st Marine Division. We run some of the MU exercises through there. So that's the other part of this, is we execute these operational vignettes, but we make sure that we have Fleet Marines in there that check the work, to tell us if something's just not right or wouldn't work that way, and give us a good check on the architecture before it goes out and implemented by the fleet. Scenario-driven operational vignettes, I can't overstate this point. What that does for us is, as we tie systems together and it's run by a real simulation, so I'm receiving, I'll say, live traffic into one of my aviation command control systems, CAC2S for example. I'm receiving live track data into that. I can watch and I can monitor that track as that data gets moved from CAC2S, aviation command and control, down to an AFATIDS. They're right next to one another. Those operators are talking, the watch officers watching what they're doing. We can see the message translation. We can also see if it's a moving track on the surface, how that data gets from aviation command and control down to a fire system. We can check all of those things to make sure that the integration piece is right. We think we got that recipe just about right. So what's the impact of doing all that work? Again, is the demonstration of the kill chains. So we brought in many Fleet Marine units that sit there and didn't realize the integration capability as it exists today on our programs of record. They didn't know that those things could work, because we're still just a little bit stovepiped out into the fleet, where we have ground units doing ground stuff still, aviation units doing aviation units stuff still. When we put them together, show them that how those systems can interoperate, it's pretty awesome. So the other big piece to JAC2 and all the others that you'll see here in a minute too is providing immediate feedback to higher headquarters, so we can accelerate requirements development. So we can talk to the material developers that have programs of record that maybe they just need to do something, just a little tweak to that system. We don't need to procure anything new. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time and effort or money. We just need to move something just a little bit to make sure that those systems are interoperable and can be employed at their maximum capability for the fleet. So one of the other things we talked about I talked about is Nile. And Nile is, again, we're projecting the Marine Littoral Regiment just like the rest of them. And they like us to go down to the smallest subordinate element possible. So we'll have that command element that you saw. We'll also have EAB sites, whether it be a fires EAB, a sensors EAB site, and make sure that we can operate and conduct operations against the vignettes that are proposed on the simulation. So we also bring down, gain input from the fleet. We bring in those operators, again, VMX1. We bring in folks from 1MEF. We bring in folks from the division and subordinate units within 1MEF to check our work and to operate the systems as we execute these things. Another nice, a real positive capability that Nile will give us is we're connecting to multiple labs, multiple Navy labs across the country. Each one of these bringing just a unique capability that we can then bring in that capability through data pathways into the MLR. And an example of that would be, we'll say, a national technical targeting means or something like that. These other labs can replicate that, put that traffic on the network, bring it into our environment, and then we can execute operations having that available to us as if it were a live transmission pathway. So again, the same thing for the Nile. We run about 2 of these a year. We're going to start the next one here next month, and it's going to be pretty exciting because we're doing a lot of work for the other services in terms of project convergence and overmatch layered into this Nile event. So we'll have some pretty close to immediate feedback to our folks at Headquarters Marine Corps, so they can get some rudder steer on what they need to look after inside of their programs, and demonstrate new capabilities. So one of the nice things in Nile typically our main customer is McWill. So the Marine Corps Warfighting Laboratory will bring in lots of cool toys. They'll bring in small form factor this, small form factor that, things that we can rapidly integrate into our environment, run mission threads through them, and provide feedback on whether or not it's important to carry on and develop that capability further. So I keep talking about it. We think we have the integration piece right for an MLR in EABO in support of distributed maritime ops. Now we're laser focused on our transmission pathways in littoral operations in a contested environment, or LOKI. So for Project Overmatch, again, tightly coupled with NAVWAR, they're just down the street. We maintain persistent connections with those folks to evaluate and refine that capability as it's being developed. So again, as the Commandant's told us to do, we're marching off smartly, or getting back to our naval integration, our roots, and it's all about distributed maritime ops. It's all about expeditionary advanced basing operations, typically in Indo-PACOM. That's what we've been focused on lately, but it could be anywhere on the globe, but it's the same story. And it's always operations in a contested environment. Again, focus is on the transmission pathways at this point to make sure that we can move data the way we need to. So agile development, if you've listened to the Overmatch folks talk, NAVWAR, Rear Admiral Small, or any of his team, that's how their approach is to developing capabilities and folding them into the Navy. So quick technology integration, demonstrations, and evaluations, of which we participate with, and it allows them to give informed recommendations to both of our headquarters. So how are we participating in that? Again, we're projecting the MLR. We're evolving the Battle Lab. We're connecting to our naval partners, and we're executing those mission threads in that DMO EABO construct. So how do we operationalize these things? We talked about what we're doing in the lab. A lot of it's simulation driven, a lot of it's integration and lab work. We're connecting to other labs, but at the end of the day, this work needs to inform something. It either needs to inform a requirement, a capability that's being developed, or a new way to do something, or maybe we're finding issues that the existing systems we have just aren't working the way that they need to keep up. So we're participating in major scale or large scale exercises. We go to places like Island Marauder with 3rd Marine Regiment. We typically bring in elements of 1 MEF into our labs to let them use our equipment, provide feedback on the architecture and the mission threads as we're developing them. So large scale exercise support. On Camp Pendleton, our neighbors are 1 MEF. They love to come up, and once a quarter we do a named exercise with them every quarter, and it brings in units again from Yuma all through the MEF to collaborate, integrate with 3rd Fleet, and it's very productive, and it gives us good feedback and products that we can hand over to the fleet when we're done. So developing capability evaluations, again, McWill, whether it's a McWill product, whether it's, I think, previous McTISA we talked about our we're now a technical authority where we can maintain some partnering arrangements with industry. We can bring things in we can get approvals, we can look at capability very quickly and either spiral it out in an architecture the fleet can use or go back to the drawing board. And then S&T demonstrations and assessments, we do that routinely with both the operating forces in the fleet and for agencies like McWill or other services that want us to connect to and evaluate their capabilities that they provide during our operational vignettes and our events at MCTISA. So I felt like I've been talking pretty fast, and this is my last slide because I think the bar is open soon. And so that's me. I am the Deputy Director at Test and Certification Division. Major Eric Kim runs our Marine Littoral Regiment. Most of the officers that we have at MCTISA, to include in TCD, that run things like this, they're all coming from NPS, computer science guys, so they like to get in there, nerd out, you know, crack into the machines and figure out what these things can do. And then if you guys want to come up, if you want to come up and see what we're doing, if you want to come up and you have something you believe that would be beneficial, however that path goes through our folks, that's the bottom line there for MCTISA Ops. Give them a call or send them an email and see if you can get on the calendar and get some time with the folks in the lab. And with that, do I have any questions? And I hear that we need to use the microphone in the aisleway there.
Hey, Dave. Brian Duvall, GDIT. Real quick question in reference to C2PC and TSOA. How does that play in this architecture?
That's a great question. So for our C2 systems, we use all of the systems that are fielded and being used by, I'll say, Regiment and below. So C2PC does play a role. I think we're calling it JTCW now, but it's basically that. We use TCS servers. So we'll get a common operational picture fed as part of the simulation, and it goes to those tactical systems, and either our contractors or the Marines that participate in the exercise will use those no different than they would if they were in a regimental COC in either a live exercise or conducting operations. TSOA we used on one of the JAC2 events. I don't think we used the entire capability, and since then we haven't really integrated TSOA again. But JTCW, TCS, all of the other ways to get COP data in, and for the Marines and our operators to use during the operations, pretty much we're using those systems.
Thank you. Another question in reference to JADC2. I see we're doing the kill chain analysis and so forth. Are we doing anything with AI and ML and being able to take that data and then provide some analytical feedback to the commander?
That's a great question. And when you say are we, so the royal we, DOD, that's yes, we are. So when I mention our ability to connect to the other services, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force during these events, our pathway, Marines in the middle, our pathway is to make sure that we can interoperate with those technologies. So we've done that in the past for Project Convergence 21. We've used some of the technologies that the Army had integrated for that event and connected to us. The Marine Corps' path for AI, ML, and those types of things for decision making, we're just not there yet from the MLR Battle Lab perspective.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
Hey David, Mike with TSC, running the Sea Dragon program out in the Second Island chain. So one of the things that we run into, work for guys like Task Force Cole Moana, IMF units, is we're partnering, which is the goal, right? To bring those surrogate stand-in forces, and one of the things we see is a gap with for example, I'll just take an airborne ISR GOCO mission supporting the host nation and being able to get it FMV to shooter type stuff. Right now, there's nothing that exists. I mean, is there anything that your unit is looking at? Understand you gotta have a very vested interest with the units that are deploying out there as part of EABO Again, using those joint, not just joint force, but joint nation resources to be able to talk to each other. We're really firewalled pretty bad out there.
Right, that's a great question. One of the focused areas for PC, for Project Convergence, is coalition partnerships. So I'll just talk about that at a very high level. It's all about who we're working with, and it's all about the cross-domain solution that we can use to still get it done, both within the MLR, because we still need to talk to our subordinate elements, and then reach out to our adjacent units that probably are coalition force and our joint forces. We have less trouble, I'll say, with the joint stuff than we do with the coalition. We haven't cracked that nut quite yet. So if there's anybody out there that has a great cross-domain capability, we'd love to see it, to get down to the SecRel and be able to share the data that can close those kill chains with our coalition partners. I think for the joint force, we have quite a bit of a lot of sets and reps in the lab environment. And I'll caveat that because we're not really on transmission pathways that really give you some trouble when you're operating great distances in the littorals. So that's our focus now. We're just starting to, I'll say this year, force our use of the MLR-TE and transmission pathways that we'll have to do just what you described, to talk to the Navy, to make sure we're talking to the MDTF, which is a big one that'll be partnered with us for that type of operation. So we're looking at the transmission pathways yet. We don't think it's going to be a system integration problem. We think it'll be a transmission pathway problem, maybe. But for our coalition partners, we need help. We need help with the cross-domain solution stuff. Any other questions?
Hi, sorry. This is Jeff with Task and Purpose. This may be out of your lane, but the presentation said that the Marine Littoral combat team will have anti-ship missiles. Has it been determined what type of missiles those are, or are they still being developed?
It is still in development. The capability, so for the subordinate elements of the MLR, that's where the capability will reside, in the Littoral combat team.
Is it possible it could be something like PRISM?
So we've looked at some of the technologies that our other services are in development, and I think that we're looking toward I'll say a generic weapons or an ammunition loadout that could be used in HIMARS, in our Nemesis type systems. So not out of the question, but the path that we're on is looking for an anti-ship capability that's in development now. Yep. Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your time. I don't know if the bar's open yet, but thanks for your time, and I'll be around for a couple of minutes if you think of something before we get out of here. Thanks a lot.